Lee Murray had a decision to make in 2005. He could continue his promising career as a UFC fighter, earning honest money by punching people in the face professionally, or he could rob £53 million from a security depot and immediately blow his cover by crashing a Ferrari. He chose option 2, which tells you everything about his decision-making skills. This is the story of how a mixed martial arts fighter assembled a team of 25 people, spent 6 months planning the second-largest cash robbery in British history, executed it flawlessly, and then got caught because he couldn't drive a sports car without hitting things. It's also about £32 million that disappeared and has never been found, making this the world's most expensive game of hide-and-seek. Smuggfalls. Smuggfalls are renowned the action. Jenny remain hound simple store kongalan du smug, her one hang prepsik in, and eily lit, and lesale in sklel.
Me mother the least cov that again.
Lee Murray wasn't your typical criminal mastermind. He was Lightning Lee Murray, a legitimate UFC fighter who'd competed in the octagon and had a legitimate shot at a championship career. He'd fought in UFC 38. He had sponsors. He had fans. He had a future. But apparently punching people for prize money wasn't lucrative enough, so he decided to pivot into grand larceny. The planning phase began in mid-2005. Murray recruited a team that would make Ocean's 11 look like a small family business. 25 people. Not 5 cool guys with special skills. 25 people who all needed to keep their mouths shut and not mess up. If you've ever tried to organize a group dinner with 8 people, you know how well this was destined to go. The crew included Paul Allen, another MMA fighter because apparently combat sports weren't paying well, Emir Heisanaj, an Albanian who'd arrived illegally in 1999 and got a job at Securitas, which is the security equivalent of hiring a fox to guard your henhouse. Stuart Royal handled logistics. Roger Coots dealt with vehicles. Multiple others had various specialized roles that all sounded very professional. The key to their plan was Emir Heisanaj, the insider. He worked at the Securitas Depot in Tonbridge, Kent, which stored cash for banks across southern England. We're talking about a facility that held over £150 million on any given night. Heisanaj spent 3 months recording everything with a mini camera attached to his belt, like he was shooting a low-budget heist documentary. Smiling documented security schedules, safe locations, protocols, and employee faces. He studied the depot like it was his university thesis, except his thesis was, how to rob my employer of £50 million. The level of inside knowledge was impressive. He knew when guards changed shifts and which doors had which codes. He documented where the money sat waiting to be stolen. It was espionage-level intelligence gathering, conducted by a guy who probably should have just asked for a raise instead of committing felonies. The plan centered on Colin Dixon, a 42-year-old depot manager who had the keys to the kingdom, literally. He had access codes to everything. So naturally, Murray's team decided to study Dixon's entire life like obsessed stalkers. They filmed his house. They tracked his daily routes. They learned his schedule down to the minute. They knew more about Colin Dixon than Colin Dixon probably knew about himself. For months, they watched and planned. They acquired weapons, including AK-47 assault rifles, which seems excessive for a robbery, but apparently Murray wanted to make sure everyone understood he was serious. They arranged vehicles. They coordinated timing. They built an entire operational plan that would have impressed military strategists. 6 months of meticulous preparation for 1 night of perfect execution. Too bad they couldn't dedicate 1 afternoon to not crashing Ferraris. The night of February 21, 2006, they put their plan into action. At 7 p.m., several team members dressed as police officers pulled over Colin Dixon's car. Dixon thought he was being arrested, which is the kind of confidence that comes from having nothing to hide except access to £50 million. While fake cops detained Dixon, others broke into his house and took his wife and 8-year-old son to ensure cooperation. Snopwander Dixon received a phone call with clear instructions: cooperate or your family suffers. It's worth noting that nobody was physically harmed during this operation, though the psychological impact of being held hostage is presumably not great for family dinner conversations afterward. The team had Dixon exactly where they needed him, terrified and compliant. Sometimes the best security systems are defeated by threatening the humans who operate them. At 1:30 a.m. on February 22nd, Dixon was driven to the depot under duress. His family was being held elsewhere as insurance. He had access codes that opened doors worth £53 million, and now he was going to use them for people with guns. This is what security experts call a social engineering attack, which is a fancy way of saying they threatened him until he helped them rob his employer. At 2 a.m., Dixon opened the doors. 7 masked men with assault rifles stormed inside like they were raiding a military compound instead of a cash depot. The security guards were immediately subdued and tied up. Other employees were restrained. Murray stood there timing everything with a stopwatch, which earned him the nickname Stopwatch because criminal masterminds apparently need comic book villain names. Very professional, very terrifying, very illegal. The depot held £154 million that night. That's enough money to buy a small island, or several large yachts, or fund a lifetime supply of regret. But the team could only take $53 million because the rest was too heavy to move in the time they had. They weren't just robbing a bank, they were weightlifting cash and discovering that money is surprisingly heavy when you're stealing it in bulk. Smiling. They specifically chose banknotes that were scheduled for destruction. These notes had no tracked serial numbers, making them effectively untraceable. This was smart thinking. They'd done their homework. They knew exactly which money to take for maximum untraceability. It's the kind of attention to detail that makes you wonder why they couldn't apply this same intelligence to not getting caught later, was it smiling? The fact of exalt that then work with their threads on proud. Someone and instantly destroy our heading. The entire operation took 1 hour and 15 minutes. They loaded cash into boxes, moved boxes to a white truck, and prepared to leave with one of the largest cash hauls in British history. Murray's timing was perfect. The execution was flawless. Every team member knew their role. They were minutes away from the perfect crime. All they needed to do was not crash a Ferrari in the next 24 hours. Spoiler alert, they couldn't manage it. Smiling. At 4:15 a.m., they left. Murray told the tied-up guards not to call police for an hour, or their families would be harmed. Dixon and his family were released unharmed shortly after. At 5 a.m., the first call to police was made. By then, the robbers had a significant head start. They'd pulled off the second-largest cash robbery in British history. All they had to do was disappear quietly and not draw attention to themselves. This is where things got stupid. Securitas and insurance companies immediately offered a £2 million reward for information leading to arrests. This was the largest reward in UK crime history. The economics were simple. Spend $2 million to recover $53 million. Every criminal in Britain knew about the reward. Every criminal in Britain also knew that claiming it required admitting you knew about the heist, which is the informant's catch-22. The pressure was immediate and intense. Paul Allen, one of the MMA fighter accomplices, decided the best way to stay low-key after robbing £53 million was to flee to Morocco and immediately start living like a lottery winner who'd forgotten about taxes. He bought luxury villas. He purchased expensive cars. He bought jewelry. He basically announced his newfound wealth to everyone around him. Subtle was not in his vocabulary. Doubtless. People noticed. When someone who used to struggle financially suddenly has multiple villas and sports cars, neighbors tend to ask questions. Allen was living the dream except for the part where he was an international fugitive. The Moroccan luxury lifestyle is great until someone wonders where all your money came from and calls Interpol. But Allen was too busy enjoying his wealth to worry about minor details like getting caught. Meanwhile, Lee Murray had his own problems. The day before the robbery, he crashed his yellow Ferrari 360 Modena on New Kent Road. Not after the robbery when he was fleeing with cash. Before the robbery when he needed to stay invisible. Murray wrecked an extremely noticeable bright yellow sports car in a very public accident. This is like robbing a bank while wearing a name tag. Police arrested Murray at the crash scene for assault after he attacked someone following the accident. He gave police a false name, which probably seemed clever at the time. But here's what he left in the crashed Ferrari. 2 mobile phones with contact numbers for multiple gang members, and 3 photographs of Murray partying with Paul Allen and another accomplice at a nightclub. He basically left a directory of co-conspirators in the wreckage. Smoke. Those photographs became primary evidence. The phones connected him to other team members. The false name raised suspicion. The timing of the crash, literally the day before Britain's largest cash robbery, made investigators very interested in this particular UFC fighter who apparently couldn't drive straight. Murray had created an evidence trail that toddlers could follow. It was gift-wrapping a confession and mailing it to Scotland Yard. As if that wasn't enough stupidity, team members started fighting over money distribution. Some felt they deserved larger cuts. Others accused each other of skimming. Internal disputes turned into betrayals. Several members became informants. There's nothing quite like honor among thieves, except when there's £53 million to argue about. Then honor goes out the window faster than Murray's career prospects. Police found evidence in homes, including depot floor plans with fingerprints. They discovered DNA at the crime scene, hair samples, saliva, blood traces. The forensic evidence connected Paul Allen and others directly to the robbery. The team that spent 6 months planning the perfect heist had forgotten basic lessons about not leaving biological evidence at crime scenes. CSI episodes are apparently not mandatory viewing for aspiring criminals. Within a week of the robbery, police arrested 36 people. That's impressive considering only 25 were supposedly involved. Either the team was larger than thought, or police were just rounding up everyone Murray had ever met. Investigators recovered £9.6 million hidden in a shipping container in Welling. They found £8.6 million in a garage in Southborough. The hidden money was being found faster than Murray could flee the country. But Murray and Allen weren't sticking around for arrests. They flew to Amsterdam, then Morocco. Morocco doesn't have an extradition treaty with the UK, making it the perfect destination for British criminals who want to retire somewhere warm with questionable legal cooperation. Murray and Allen settled into Moroccan luxury, buying homes, yachts, and generally living like rap stars without the music career. In Morocco, they continued their strategy of staying invisible by being as visible as possible. Expensive properties, luxury vehicles, parties, drug use. They were living proof that you can take the criminal out of Britain, but you can't take the stupidity out of the criminal. Every expenditure was basically a billboard announcing, "We robbed that British depot, come arrest us." Back in Britain, trials were progressing. Emir Heisinaj, the insider who'd filmed everything with his belt camera, got 20 years. That's a long time to regret betraying your employer for money you barely got to spend. Jetmir Boukpapa received life imprisonment with a minimum of 15 years. Roger Coutts got life with 15 years minimum. Stuart Royal got life with 15 years minimum. Leia Rusha also got life with 15 years minimum. The sentences were harsh because the crime was enormous. £53 million doesn't just disappear without serious consequences. Judges were not amused by the largest cash robbery in their jurisdiction. The message was clear: steal this much money, and your life is effectively over, even if you successfully hide some of it. Freedom has a price tag, and it's apparently higher than £53 million when you're in prison. In 2010, Moroccan authorities arrested Lee Murray. The UK wanted him extradited for trial, but Morocco said no because Murray had Moroccan citizenship through his father. Instead, Morocco tried him locally. He was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in a Moroccan prison. This is what happens when your escape plan includes obtaining citizenship in a country that doesn't want to send you back, but also doesn't approve of bank robbery. Paul Allen was also arrested in Morocco, but was deported back to the UK. He received 18 years in British prison, but served only 6 before release. 6 years for one of the largest robberies in history seems like a pretty good return on investment, except for the part where he lost his freedom and most of the money. Allen was released and allegedly attempted to live a clean life, which lasted until 2019 when he was shot in an apparent gang-related incident. Murray remains in Moroccan prison serving his 25-year sentence. He's now in his mid-40s, which means he'll be in his 50s before potential release. That's a long time to think about what could have been. He could have been a UFC champion earning legitimate money and fame. Instead, he's a cautionary tale about career choices and Ferrari maintenance. The octagon would have been less painful than Moroccan prison conditions. Here's the beautiful part. £32 million was never recovered. Police found about 21 million of the 53 million stolen. The rest simply vanished. Disappeared completely. Gone like Murray's UFC championship dreams, just poof, no trace, no explanation. Theories abound about where it went. Some think it's buried in rural British countryside. Others believe it's hidden in Morocco. Some suspect offshore accounts. Others think it was spent on luxury goods and drugs. Nobody knows for certain. £32 million is currently the world's most expensive missing money. It's out there somewhere, either rotting in the ground, sitting in someone's basement, converted into untraceable assets, or already spent on things that depreciated faster than Murray's fighting career. The money exists in some form, but finding it requires knowing where Murray and his team hid it, and they're not telling anyone from prison cells. The case inspired documentaries, books, and endless speculation. Netflix produced a film about it, because nothing says entertainment like watching criminals destroy their lives for money they can't keep. Crime enthusiasts study the Securitas heist as an example of brilliant planning undermined by catastrophically stupid execution. It's taught in security courses as a lesson in human vulnerability and the importance of protecting key personnel from coercion. The insurance companies paid out the losses, which means ultimately, British banks and their customers absorbed the cost. £53 million disappeared from the system, most of it never recovered, and everybody's insurance premiums probably went up slightly. Crime might not pay for criminals, but it definitely costs everyone else. The only winners were whoever successfully hid and spent that missing $32 million. Looking back, this heist had everything. A UFC fighter mastermind, months of military precision planning, insider access, assault rifles, hostages, £53 million stolen, a nearly perfect execution, and one catastrophically stupid Ferrari crash that unraveled everything. It's the criminal equivalent of spending 6 months training for a marathon and then tripping on your shoelaces at the starting line. Smucklessly look. Don't go off, my man, hey. and smokeless nagets halted Yuko Mankak. Lee Murray went from potentially becoming a UFC champion to becoming a prisoner. He traded punching people in a cage for living in a cage. The irony is not subtle. He had legitimate fighting talent and could have made decent money in mixed martial arts. Instead, he chose crime and ended up with the worst possible outcome: caught, imprisoned, and unable to enjoy the money he stole. The team's downfall wasn't the plan. The plan was brilliant. It wasn't the execution. The execution was nearly flawless. It was the aftermath. Murray crashed a Ferrari. Allen lived like a millionaire immediately. Team members turned on each other. DNA was left everywhere. Phones and photos were abandoned in crashed cars. They did everything right except the part where they needed to disappear quietly and not act like they just won the lottery. This is a story about how professional planning means nothing if you can't handle success. About how 6 months of careful preparation can be destroyed in one day by a car accident. About how stealing £53 million is easier than keeping it when you're too stupid to stay quiet. About how a UFC fighter could master the octagon, but not basic evidence disposal. If there's a lesson here, it's that crime requires two skills: executing the crime and not getting caught afterward. Murray's team was excellent at the first part. They were spectacularly terrible at the second part. They could rob a fortress, but couldn't rob it quietly. They could steal millions, but couldn't spend it responsibly. They could plan for months, but couldn't think 1 week ahead. The Securitas Depot heist will be remembered as the second largest cash robbery in British history and one of the dumbest. £53 million stolen with military precision, caught by a crashed Ferrari, and photographs left in the wreckage. 21 million recovered, 32 million gone forever, and multiple people in prison for decades. Perfect crime, imperfect criminals. The math checks out when stupidity is part of the equation. Lee Murray sits in a Moroccan prison, probably replaying that Ferrari crash in his mind every day. One different decision: not driving recklessly, not leaving evidence, not crashing the car at all, and he might have escaped. But he crashed, and the crash brought everything down. Sometimes the difference between freedom and decades in prison is as simple as not hitting things with expensive sports cars the day before committing Britain's largest robbery. The £32 million is still out there. Maybe it's buried. Maybe it's spent. Maybe it's sitting in a safety deposit box in some country with good banking privacy laws. Maybe it rotted in the ground after being poorly hidden. We'll probably never know. But somewhere that money exists in